Good morning and good evening to the audience wherever you are, and our speakers for the 7th Transatlantic AI Exchange web session. Today is December 7th, 2021, and I'm Petra Vorsteher, co-founder of AI.HAMBURG, AI Fund, AI for Germany, and the Transatlantic AI Exchange. We are again super excited bringing together high-tech experts and connecting them with the up-and-coming German AI ecosystem. Allow me to provide a quick overview of this Transatlantic AI Exchange initiative. The Transatlantic AI Exchange is a platform that aims at accelerating and expanding the transatlantic knowledge exchange in the human-to-machine economy, the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution. We foster exchanges on AI and create the grounds for entrepreneurs, researchers, investors, German Mittelstand, and policymakers to build long-term partnerships. A big thank you to the founder of the Transatlantic AI Exchange, today's moderator and a longtime friend, Mr. Thomas Neubert, as well as co-partners Ragnar Cruz and Oliver Gottfried from AI.HAMBURG. AI.HAMBURG is a not-for-profit initiative with the goal to accelerate the adoption of AI in companies and startups, to promote education and training, and to build a leading ecosystem for the application of artificial intelligence in the region. AI for Germany promotes AI with 9 state initiatives within Germany. And last but not least, the AI Fund is a highly focused entrepreneurial investment fund committed to advance AI for Europe. We could not do all this without our sponsors, and therefore I'd like to thank our platinum sponsor, Taylor Wessing, and gold sponsor, the German consulate in San Francisco, as well as the Startup Network Europe. Thank you so much. We have already secured an impressive list of upcoming events and are excited about the topics and the experts supporting our program. For more detail and to secure a slot, feel free to sign up right after today's event. If you believe our event is of value to you and your network, we greatly appreciate to share and like us on LinkedIn page. If anyone has a transatlantic or AI-related topic of any sort, please reach out to us and we will consider building them into our program. We really like to hear from you to offer the most relevant programs possible. Just scan this QR code with your mobile phone or participate online. The URL will be posted in the chat during the session. It will not interrupt the Zoom session. At the end of the 60-minute session, we will provide a new Zoom link in that chat to open up a 30-minute transatlantic networking opportunity for people who are interested. And now I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Thomas, who is also the founder and evangelist of Transatlantic AI Exchange. Thank you so much for being part of this event. Thomas, I give it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Petra. Appreciate the introduction as always. And thank you, everybody, for attending the session today. Today is a very interesting, unique session because we picked very unique, kind of different incubators programs in itself. Some of them are international, some of them are coming out of Silicon Valley, and all are based in Germany, delivering startup structures and platforms for the AI ecosystem to be built. Maybe a quick comment about myself. I spent most of my professional career in building startup companies or international subsidiaries. At the moment, for the last years, I work at Intel's headquarters in Santa Clara, working pretty much exclusively in and around data center topics and artificial intelligence. Hence the reason why earlier in the year, with friends like Petra and others, we started this initiative about the Transatlantic AI Exchange. So with that in mind, I just want to quickly take a moment and re-emphasize on a slide that we showed earlier about the upcoming sessions. There's one last session, December 16th, with some executives, entrepreneurs who actually successfully out of Germany came over here, built their companies and then went back. So that will be an interesting global aspect. But I really want to point out the plans that we have for 2022, at least for the first quarter. So one is the cloud. As I was recently in Germany and I had a bunch of meetings, the cloud is a very interesting topic within the AI space. They are the hyperscalers, and Europe is asking themselves, what can Europe do to build an alternative cloud offering that stands in itself, but also stands against what we call the 7 hyperscalers. Very interesting topic, very interesting speakers. You will find more details in the next 2 weeks on our website. So please sign up on that one. In February, we are talking about the digitization and who is actually really driving digitization. There are different opinions. Is it the top-down approach with the big corporations and the government? Or is it really the investors and the startups and the entrepreneurs with some really cool ideas from the bottom up? So we are going to explore that. And something very unique, which we haven't done before, is we are going to organize or co-organize a European-wide AI conference where we are bringing entrepreneurs, investors together with over probably 20 speakers for a 2-hour session, and that will take place in March. So we welcome you to attend that. And with that in mind, I would say let's go into our session for today. We have 4 interesting speakers, as I mentioned before. I would like to introduce one after the other. They can talk about themselves a little bit and the kind of accelerator incubator program that they are offering in Germany. And then we go into more of an open discussions and analyze how the ecosystem of startups can take advantage of these various programs that are in place. With that in mind, I would like to give it over to Andreas Liebel. He is Geschäftsführer Applied AI Unternehmertum GmbH in Munich. So Andreas, why don't we start with you? Welcome to the session.
Hello, everybody. Yes, warm welcome also from my side. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks, Thomas, for the invite. And maybe a little bit about what we're doing before we then start the session. So what we are is kind of a mix of 3 things. It's on one hand, innovation, and the second is entrepreneurship. We are part of Unternehmertum, which is a center for innovation and entrepreneurship. Also mixing that with research. Our goal is really to shape Europe's innovative power in AI by really applying AI in the industry in Europe. And we do this in 2 ways. One is kind of as a platform to help the industry to accelerate the journey to AI maturity, being kind of a one-stop shop for the industry. And the second is then really creating disruptive AI-based innovations together with the companies, but in topics where companies want to create the knowledge themselves. In all these parts, our main, or one of the main objectives is also to bring the companies together with the startups, because their really value is created, and that helps the organizations, the industry really to advance in almost all applications that you can think of for companies. It's rather about collaborating with startups than doing things on their own. With that, we have kind of an ecosystem of around 300 partners there. We actually educate quite a few people in online trainings, in offline trainings. We have 50 people at Applied AI ourselves to really help these organizations. With regards to the startup ecosystem, we always publish a startup landscape each year. That's mainly done with the large tech players like Google, AWS, NVIDIA, and also some larger venture capital funds in Germany like Digital Plus, UVC, Holzbrink, Lakestar, and so on and so on. So with that kind of expertise, we try to collect those from all the startups in Germany that we think are mature, are really of high quality, and which we can actually recommend companies to start a collaboration with. And then we extended that also to European level, collaborating with quite a few countries and on a European AI startup landscape. But that's kind of our goal. So bringing these partners together in then applying AI for the industry and helping the industry overall to advance in AI maturity. And kind of that background, that expertise, I'm really happy to bring in for today's discussion. I'm happy to discuss kind of our perspective on Europe, also on a global level. I'm actually part of the global partnership on AI, also applied AI. A colleague of mine is in the OECD round. So we really represent also kind of the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem in this global ecosystem from a German perspective. I'm really happy to share some insights in that as well. With that, handing back to you, Thomas.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. With that, Rasmus, please, if you can take over and explain what you guys do. Rasmus is the CEO of Merantix AG in Berlin, who actually at this moment is actually visiting Palo Alto. So I had the pleasure having dinner with him on Sunday, and maybe he can explain a little bit why he's all of a sudden rightly before Christmas here in Silicon Valley. But Rasmus, go from here. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the introduction, and Petra, Thomas, and the team. Thanks for organizing this session. I think the transatlantic connection is very close to my heart, and as Thomas said, I'm also in the US right now. I mean, certainly not for the warm weather. It's still very cold here in California. But yeah, great to be in this session, and great looking forward to the discussion. So briefly about my background in Merantix. My personal background is actually in deep learning and computer vision. So I was in research before, and then basically 5 years ago co-founded Merantix. Merantix is a venture studio for AI. So what we do is we build AI first companies, we incubate them. So we bring both the idea, but we also put the money in. Currently, we invest up to around 3 million euros per company we incubate. And we are pretty industry agnostic. So we build companies in all kinds of sectors where AI can play a major role. It could be in healthcare, it could be in biotech, it could be in automotive, it could be in manufacturing. We generally tend to focus more on vertical AI applications, so really solving a specific problem with AI really well. And we've been doing this for 5 years and have so far built six companies in very different industries. So there's, for example, Vara doing breast cancer imaging. There's CS Search doing data management. They actually just got acquired by Scale AI. Then we have Causa and business intelligence trying to explain KPI changes. Cambrium and synthetic biology, developing novel protein materials. So as you can see, it's a diverse set of companies. And the way we incubate companies is basically that founders and residents apply to join us. Since February, I think we had 1,000 people applying. We've only hired one, so there's quite a few people, very strong people we also need to select from. And then we basically work with them for around 6 to 12 months. So we like to take quite some time to really validate ideas very deeply to see, is it worth pursuing that as a venture case? And basically when we have conviction, we spin it off, we build a company, and we help them grow. There are two things that are very special about our model. So first of all, we co-locate all our companies despite COVID. We believe that there's a lot of value in physical proximity, especially in the early days when you build a team and it's about brainstorming, when it's about solving, like kind of really defining the initial scope of the company. And so we kind of scaled that model of co-locating our own companies to also allow other companies to co-locate with us, which then turned into the so-called AI campus, a physical space in Berlin, where currently more than 500 people from around 50 different organizations work together in one place on AI applications. And it's really interesting because there's a couple of investors who invest in AI. There's a few spin-offs from universities who just got started. There are a few Fortune 500 companies with AI teams. And that is super interesting for us, but also I think for all the companies there in terms of knowledge exchange, but also in terms of the opportunity of doing business with each other. And so, yeah, if you are ever in Berlin and obviously into AI, feel free to visit the campus. It's a pretty fun place. The second thing is what we've always been doing is running building customized AI solutions also for companies, which our company Merantix Labs does. And so there we work for some Fortune 500 companies, we work for some startups, some SMEs, but basically building customized AI solutions. And that really helps us to also be close to the industry and also kind of bring our product developing knowledge in AI into kind of more the broader SMEs and companies within Germany and beyond. And as Thomas said, like I'm in the US right now. For us, it's super important to have this strong connection to North America for a few reasons. Like first of all, quite a few of our investors come from here, both in terms of follow-up funds that invest in our companies, as well as our limited partners of our venture fund. For example, TI Platform is in our fund. They've anchored like 50 funds. They're based in San Francisco. We have a few big US foundations as investors like Kellogg and Robert Johnson. And also SoftBank is an investor with us, so also has a strong presence here. So from a capital perspective, it's super important to plug in here because, I mean, the reality is still that there's just so much more, especially deep tech capital out here. And also very experienced capital. The second thing is that for us, it's also always important to source new trends where we potentially want to build companies. And so being kind of close to Silicon Valley certainly helps us to kind of make sure we are at the forefront when it's about incubating new companies, both from a technological perspective, but also from a perspective of what things are more easily fundable. And then the third thing is that there is a lot of very strong talent out here, and some of which also is originally from Europe and actually would love to move back to Europe. And so also connecting to kind of local talent here is very important for us. We've hired quite a few of our founders who lived in North America before. So that's why I'm basically out here like every 2 months and try to build a stronger bridge. And lastly, I think there is a lot of, strong also founders from Europe originally who have been building great companies out here in the Valley. And so I think bringing that knowledge back also from an advisory perspective is super valuable. And so I think it's a great initiative to build this bridge, what Thomas and the team is up to, and very much looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Rasmus. Next is Alois. Alois Eder is the CTO of Intel Ignite Germany. I'm obviously with Intel myself in the headquarters, so I'm very close to Alois and the team. Alois, please explain what you guys are up to.
Yeah, hi all. Also, good evening, good morning, wherever you are from my side. Thanks, Thomas, my dear colleague. As Thomas said, I'm CTO of the Startup Engagement Program, Ignite. Actually, it's not Germany, it's Europe. And we have set up the hub for this program in Munich, basically in the pretty central location of whole Europe. With Ignite, we target early stage startups, typically post-seed, still in the pre-A phase, and all of them in the deep tech segment. So the startups in the batch that we have had so far, and we have 2 batches already in Europe, typically have a seed funding of an average 3.5 million, so from 1 million to 6 million. So that's the range of startups that we are targeting for the program. The selected startups then get a highly tailored program, which covers not just technology, as you might think from a technology company like Intel, but all topics, including their strategy, market, even dedicated CEO coaching is part of the program. The program is for free, so we do not take any equity. It comes without any obligations for the startups. And within the program, startups have access to a network of entrepreneurs, serial founders, industry experts, and top-level experts from Intel as mentors. So if you go to the next slide, then I can show you a bit more how the program looks in terms of numbers. The program is being set up globally. So far, it's set up in Tel Aviv for Israel in 5 batches and 2 batches in Munich for Europe, as mentioned. We have around 200 startups applying per batch. Means that we have looked into about 1,500 startups since the program was started. Then after a selection process, 10 startups are invited to join the program, which means we have roughly a 5% acceptance rate. So you can see it's a very selective program. The program then goes over 12 weeks, where every week has a different focus topic, and it covers the areas of people and culture, product and tech, marketing and sales, and fundraising and growth. And basically, to address these focus topics, we have around 30 sessions within this 12 weeks. We invite related top speakers, and it's not a program like a university program. It's not a lecture. It's interactive, very tailored sessions for the startups. And very important is that the speakers are then available for the startups to do one-on-one topics to go really deep on their pain points. The other key part of the program is mentoring from over 100 Intel experts. And these are typically real key representatives from management or technical leads. The assignment is one lead mentor per startup, plus a team of experts that work with the founder team over the entire 12 weeks. And this Intel mentoring is really the key differentiator. As far as we know, no other program can offer such global, deepest technology expertise down to the hardware, down to the silicon, the entire verticals, and also the graduated startups so far in the program confirm that this is really unique to this program. And in addition to the Intel experts, we involve about 100 industry experts roughly per batch, and also have more than 100 investor contacts. So to really cover the whole, all areas that such startups may need help with. The main technologies that we have seen in the batches so far are in the area of data and cloud, cybersecurity, computer vision, lots of autonomous driving and robotics in Central Europe, and in general, DevOps, MLOps tooling, as well as next generation computing. It essentially means quantum computing is a lot there, and neuromorphic implementations. So for AI acceleration. When it comes to AI, AI actually is not an application. AI is an enabler technology that is used in multiple verticals. And we see AI all over in the program. I have looked up some statistics, and they say that startups on a broader picture say that about half of them, or even more than half of them, are claiming they use AI already. And actually, we see this even more in the startup candidates of our program. So we see that well more than 50% are using AI already. And when it really comes down to startups where their product is about AI, like an AI accelerated implementation or tooling for AI, then it's about 20%. So it means basically 2 startups out of 10 having such an AI-based product. As an example, in our current batch, among the 10 startups, we have one that does a neuromorphic-based AI edge accelerator chip, and another one that has an amazing tool to reduce MLOps for computer vision applications. So that's a quick intro to Ignite, and I look forward to get your questions later on. Thomas, back to you.
Great, Alois, thank you very much. Last but not least, Sasha Karampou is the managing director at the Plug and Play Germany GmbH office or entity. Plug and Play, as people may know, came out of Silicon Valley, is very established here. I personally have to say, many years ago, I was actually an entrepreneur myself and was physically located in the Plug and Play Center twice in my career. As a startup guy. So Sasha, please take it from here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Thomas, and thank you, Tykes team, for having me in this round. And Thomas, you stole my introduction. Thank you. Yes, so to myself, I'm running the entity of Plug and Play here in Germany. We are here in Germany in 4 locations now. I'm running the program here in Stuttgart called Startup Autobahn operatively, but a little bit to Plug and Play. We just had our 15-year anniversary. We are having basically 2 focuses. When we started 15 years ago, it was mainly an investment focus. We are still doing investments. We are doing about 200 investments per year, mostly early stage. we are investing out of our operating income. We are also investing out of several funds we have, also a follow-up fund for investment, a bigger one. And now we are also starting to create vertical funds, for example, an InsurTech fund or smart city fund, etc. And inviting corporations or professional investors or family offices to join these funds. So that's one focus which we do. And of course, we do invest in a lot of AI startups. Alone during this pandemic, we had, I think, before the pandemic, about 12 unicorns in our portfolio. In the meanwhile, it's about 27 unicorns in our portfolio. But what we are even more proud of is, especially in the past 5-6 years, we have started to internationalize. And today we have 40 locations worldwide. We have about 60 programs, which we call verticals, on specific topics and or themes. Maybe now it's a good time to pull up the slides, by the way. So we have about 19 verticals, topics from IoT, mobility, InsurTech, FinTech, retail tech, health tech, and so on, you name it. And in each of these verticals, we cluster industry partners. We have about 500 industry partners, world-leading companies globally. Looking at Stuttgart, it's one of our most successful programs. We have about 30 partners here in Stuttgart on this topic, mobility. What's interesting, because I'm talking about the international focus, is that this program was initiated by one of our corporate partners, namely Mercedes, or back then Daimler, who also 6 years ago was a member of Plug and Play Tech Center in Silicon Valley, looking to connect with the best startups in Silicon Valley and worldwide. And the reason we are in Stuttgart, as well as in many other locations in the world, is because partners like Mercedes came to us and they said, hey, we have to push collaboration with startups forward. It's great to meet them. Also, Silicon Valley, it's a great network and meeting startups and focus on investments. But the collaboration part seems to be not so easy when the startup is in another part of the world and your engineers are in a city like Stuttgart or Munich or Hamburg or Frankfurt, etc. So the idea was to create an ecosystem. We call them open innovation platforms, where Plug and Play plays a neutral part, and we are helping our partners to efficiently collaborate with startups. For most of our partners, this means doing POCs, doing pilots, and eventually implementations. So we have a very focused kind of strategy or processes which kind of lead there. And how do we do this? We go by the needs and priorities of our partners. We define and prioritize their tech interest. We go in deeper discussions with their engineers and experts. We then do a global scouting. So we do have, for example, mobility programs in Silicon Valley, in Japan, in Stuttgart, and other places. So we truly have a global look at things. Then we create kind of the top 30 lists, which we then do and go in several rounds and filter with the experts and engineers of our partners to kind of the 5 best and create one-on-one meetings. With the outlook to work with one of the startups at the end. This has been especially successful. Some numbers in Stuttgart, we are in our 11th program right now. We worked with about 300 startups, all of which had a POC committed by a business unit by one of our partners. About 400 POCs actually resulted out of it. And being the transfer rate being the most important for our partners, about 1/4 to 1/3 of these POCs are actually going into implementations. And this is what I think in today's world and working with startups, I think most important. How do I help the startup best? How do I help the corporate best? Is to really facilitate a meaningful and efficient testing, and which leads into implementation. Yeah, that's basically what we do. I hope that explains it.
Great, Sasha, thank you very much. So the interesting thing, the takeaway, at least for me, when we designed the session, was all of you have somewhat different programs serving the startup community, particularly around AI. We just heard from some of you that AI is just not an individual, segment or a vertical use case. It's more a horizontal overlay. So pretty much everybody, every company, every Mittelständler should look into the adoption of AI one way or the other. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow. With the different programs that you have, and if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm at this session here right now, I'm a startup guy, or I want to be a startup entrepreneur, how do I find you? How do I get in contact with you? Are you going out and you search certain websites, or are there conferences? How does it work that you find the portfolio companies that you would like to put into your program? And how, as a startup entrepreneur, not only do I get in contact with you, but also how do I know that your program is the best one for me to whatever the objective is? If any of you maybe take the first shot on that question. Maybe I start with Andreas.
Well, for us, it's pretty simple. We have at applied.ai.de, there's a if you go to the startup landscape, there's a request form. If you want to participate there, we can add you to the database, and in the next run with all the partners, we look to the startups also that kind of requested to be in the platform. From that, we then ask the startups to, if they like to also be part of our community platform, where we invite all our industry partners to connect, to work on use cases together, and to be in touch kind of with more or less with the German AI ecosystem. And we also ask the startups if they want to give us showcases, which we can include into the free educational programs that we have when we explain, for example, how AI works in sales and marketing. Then we would always like to have startup examples there, especially from our ecosystem. So once we have the startups in the programs, we continuously ask them if they are interested in sharing some insights and contributing to the ecosystem, and then we pick that up and bring them to the platforms and into the different programs from our side. It's all free, so there's nothing associated with anything. It's all free and voluntary.
Okay, thank you. Before I ask somebody else, maybe a follow-up question. If I have a startup company and I am not yet adapting to AI, but I have, something else, a technology, would you be able, with your platform, to help me to adopt AI to whatever idea that I have already been working on?
there's a very clear no to that question. We actually get quite a few requests from startups who say we don't have anyone, but we would like to add AI to our product. And our answer is then typically, well, if you are a startup and you want to have AI in your product, you need to have one in your team that is capable of doing that. It's not that you can, as a startup, outsource this to any partner. If that's your USP in the future, you need to be able to do that on your own. If you would like to have support, there's from the Unternehmertum ecosystem, there are all these incubator programs, the accelerator programs. Everyone can participate there. We have also some kind of matchmaking platforms if you need to. If you're looking for some co-founders or kind of technical parts of your startup, you can always look for these people in the activities and events that we have there. But you need to have that competence in your team, and then we can support in one way or the other.
Okay, maybe same questions to Rasmus next.
Yeah, sure. So I think where to meet us, I mean, at conferences like this or like sessions like this, I guess, but also so many events, but also on the AI campus. So we also have quite a lot of people visiting there, whether it's individuals or entire groups from like universities or companies. So I think that's a very easy way to connect with us, or one of our portfolio companies. Generally, like there's a few different ways to work with us. So if you want to join as a founder, I mean, you can just apply on the website. There's going to be a couple of interviews, and then what's super important is that you, as a final stage, will work with us 2 days on site where we really get to know you, and you also get to know us, because ultimately, I mean, we will really get married and potentially work together for like 10 or 15 years. So it's super important to understand the chemistry works there, and that's basically then the final stage until we make a decision to build a company with you, and then you basically come into our ideation and validation stage. And we work with you on validating a specific venture case. Now for this, we have inbound applications, we have people through the network being referred. I mean, referrals is always a strong indicator if somebody else vouches for you. But we also do some active outreach. So we also actively message people who we think could be great founders. That's the founder side. I mean, besides that, I mean, we have also a lot of open positions at all our companies for different roles. So obviously for machine learning engineering positions, but also for product, for business positions, design, marketing, like all kinds of other roles. So also if you're interested in working in an AI first company, but maybe not on the algorithms itself, there's also many opportunities. And then the third thing is if you're like an organization and you need an AI solution, I think either, you could look at one of our product companies, or work with our Merantix Labs team that also builds customized solutions for companies. And there we come in actually quite early. So some companies we really work with even on the AI strategy. So that has nothing to do with implementation. We really work with that company on kind of mapping out the AI use cases that would make most sense for them, and also which ones maybe don't make sense, and figuring out what to build for themselves versus what to maybe buy, where to buy existing solutions. So that's where we sometimes come in when kind of the AI like strategy is still very early in the customer. But sometimes customers also have very specific requests, right? They want to get a specific solution for a specific problem. They already know what they want. And then it's more on the implementation side, and we build customized solutions. So yeah, I think if you're an SME or a big organization, you always feel free to reach out. We actually also work with some startups, which is interesting because with them it's obviously very agile, and iterations are very quick, and it's then also interesting to grow with them as they become bigger and become a partner of them.
Is it a requirement for your specific program that people need to be physically present at your facility in Berlin?
I mean, we're a bit more flexible with that these days. Also, everybody right now doesn't work from the office every single day. I mean, comes in once in a while. I would say so that a lot of the value we bring to the table is this, proximity to the other founders and to the campus and the companies there, and also just the value of doing this like early brainstorming session, early product developments in person and with quick iterations. So yes, I think we want people to move to Berlin in the midterm. And that being said, we have also some people who commute even from other countries and maybe just come in like every other week. So there's some flexibility, but we would certainly at this point not incubate a company that is remote. I also think also then we are not the right partner. Then, you know, where the value we bring to the table is just not that strong for that specific respective founder. And so I think there's probably other partners that are better suited.
Okay. Sasha, what about you guys? Plug and play.
Yes, so both Andreas and Rasmus answered the question, I think, quite well already. But when it comes to startups being present here in our facilities, number one, we are not a typical incubator, so we really focused more on the collaboration between corporate and startup, and with that, you know, trying to help both the best, we think. And unless it's like a very futuristic topic for corporates to look into, like we typically work with a little bit later stage companies who have their technology already set, who have a company, who maybe already have been doing some projects, POCs or pilots with some big companies, because only then you can, you know, for a corporate, it's then easier to really scale the technology, and it really makes sense to work with a startup, we think. We don't have many startups sitting here in Stuttgart, for example. On the contrary, in Silicon Valley, where we have a big building, and we help startups also connect to a constant visitors who are coming internationally from different corporations. We do rent out space to startups, and we do also have startups sitting there also for international programs who are sending startups from Singapore or even Schleswig-Holstein or other to Silicon Valley to be exposed to the Silicon Valley environment. So it's, you know, two different focuses, but again, in general, it's not necessary for a startup to sit here. On the contrary, if you have a like fantastic startup from Israel or Japan or Silicon Valley, they probably would say no if that is a requirement to sit in your facilities. Then we are not interested to join the program or to collaborate with a partner, with an industry partner.
Okay, thank you. Alois, your program is a little bit different, but you have a beautiful facility in Munich. So how does it work at Intel Ignite?
Yeah, to start with the facility first, it's an amazing facility, but due to all the limitations, the first batch was almost completely virtual. So which was quite a challenge to set up such a program without any physical presence. It was not ideal, but it worked reasonably well considering this framework. So the whole batch was basically pulled through completely virtual, all the sessions, all the introductions, all the interviews at the beginning, everything virtual. The only physical presence was kind of at the end in July. We had the closing session where we first time saw each other, which was a very strange event to meet physically first time at the end. Now for the second batch, we turned this around. We had a kickoff session where 8 of the 10 startups really physically went to Munich, to our nice office. And it was totally different. It was just unbeatable how good this was in terms of a starting point. And maybe as we are a pretty young program, we just started earlier this year. To your first question, how do we get to the startups at all? And we had impressive numbers and a lot of startups that applied to the program. So basically, after we announced, the resonance was really, really positive. And basically, we explained not to each individual startup, but like investors or startup hubs that caught our idea, that knew their startups already, and they came up with recommendations. And within a month or two, we had about, I think, 400 startups that basically could have fit in the scheme of startups we are looking into. This was the first batch. The second batch was already quite a lot on referrals. So the few startups, 10 startups really were like a multiplayer. They they explain to other startups, to other CEOs, they know what the program can do. And believe it or not, I think 5 of the startups right now came exactly through these referrals already, in the second batch already.
Okay, thank you. So if I am a startup person and I have either literally just a PowerPoint and an idea versus I have some kind of a prototype, or I'm part of your incubation program already, and we have developed a certain program, which of your individual incubation programs is best suited, if at all, to actually help me, the startup entrepreneur, in getting into customers? How do I find, can you help me with identifying the best market segments to go after, introductions to customer for POCs, that kind of a process? Is that something where you are more active in the earlier stage, or are you also more active in the go-to-market activities with POCs and such? And I know you guys have different stages, different programs, so each one of you, maybe a quick comment on that one.
Yeah, maybe I comment first on that one. So first of all, we are not looking into very early stage startups. We're looking into startups as described that have already have their POC or a valid product idea already at hand, and that already have a level that we can really work and bring them close to customers. And part of the program is, of course, that we have sales and marketing representatives from different verticals involved. They know the ecosystem, they know the customers, they know the entire chain. And as such, if they have a mature level like that, still early stage, but mature enough to be introduced to customers, then the program can also offer the direct path to such customers globally.
Okay, so it's more on the semi-mature part of the scale.
Yeah, I mean, as mature as a startup can be in the pre-A stage, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, maybe from the Merantix perspective, we actually go much earlier. So I mean, most people who apply to us are individual founders, so they have neither a specific idea nor a team yet. We just believe that they are great people to build great AI first companies. So we go as early as possible. And I would even say that if a team is already formed and an idea is already there and a legal entity is already there, we are probably maybe not the right partner, and the company should go straight to fundraising. So we like to come in as early as possible and also help shaping the direction of the company. As the founders join, we help a lot with like the recruiting, especially making sure that the early team is great. So that's something where we're very involved with, but also with customers. So through Merantix Labs, through the AI Campus, through like our existing companies, there is a good network of industry partners, and many of them could become early design partners or like early partners to validate even the ideas, to do user interviews. So we definitely help a lot with that. And then in later stages, as the company goes to Series A, we switch more into a classic board role and stay like that. With the difference being, as the companies are co-located, there is a very deep relationship. So we don't just meet the company, once a quarter for a board meeting, but most of the founders are three times a week at least at the coffee machine, and maybe like in 1 or 2 meetings. So there's a very deep connection, and as such, it's also easy to kind of help on a continuous basis where we believe we can add value.
Helpful, thank you. Andreas?
So yeah, as Unternehmertum, so parent company, we actually support the startups from the very beginning to the very end. So overall, there's programs like Explore, where typically there are researchers that want to found based on their research and want to kind of find a team to do that. So we help kind of team development, the kind of creation of a legal entity and a first product idea. Then there are programs like Xpreneurs program, which is a classical incubator from what exactly you described, team with the first idea to kind of professionalize and find the first customers. Then there's Tech Founders as an accelerator program to do that startup and company matching and collaboration. And then there are the venture capital funds that potentially also invest in the startup. So it's really kind of from the early stages to the late stages, and you can, as a startup, apply for the different programs. Again, as kind of being a non-profit, it's all free for the startups. Applied AI itself, it's really with what we have in the startup landscape and so on, it's about applying AI. So any startup needs to be able to sell a product to companies that can kind of, so it needs to be like a really business-like relationship between a startup and a company. So we rather look for more mature teams that have a product already, that can and know how to work with the companies. Then it's typically the startups that we have on the startup landscape, and that we can also recommend to customers to simply contact and to start a collaboration with.
Okay, Sasha, any addition from you? Any comments?
Yeah, I kind of answered, I think, the question in my previous answers already a little bit. So like a super early stage startup with like 2 guys and an idea, you know, like it will be hard to work with them and connect them to our partners, which is really what we think it's our unique help to the startups. You know, that startups in a certain stage, when they're a little bit more grown up, they not only need money from investors, but they need this connection to the corporate in order to enable POCs and implementation and help them with that in their business development. So that's I think mainly our focus, but still we do have some early stage programs, not here in Stuttgart right now, but if a startup would approach us, then, you know, similar to Unternehmertum and the TUM in Munich, there's also here in Stuttgart with the University of Stuttgart and the Arena 2036 kind of a link to from research coming out to get as established as a startup or as a company. They have an entrepreneurship program, so, you know, startups would be connected to them. And you know, there's a lot of public funding as well available these days with the Exist program, etc. So yeah, we would connect them. We would connect them to the local ecosystem here.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have a few more minutes to discuss a few topics. Maybe one last question in general, and that is, I would assume almost us here on this call, we have some level of international experiences. We most likely lived across the Atlantic in our lives one year or the other, so to speak. Rasmus said earlier he's actually here every other month in Silicon Valley. What advice can you all give to an entrepreneur in Germany or in Europe in regards to building transatlantic relationships? In regards to, you know, funding outlook, customer engagements, developer communities, things like that. How can you do that? What tips from your own experience can you give a startup entrepreneur?
I think all the ones you mentioned, all the things you mentioned are super important. But it's a big market here. So from a go-to-market perspective, it's interesting. There's a lot of capital here. There's great talent. And that being said, there's for some industries, I mean, there's a lot of domain knowledge and domain experts in Germany and Europe. There's also, you know, a lot of technical talent there. So I think it makes a lot of sense to build companies in Europe. And as you know, with COVID, anyways, everything is now more global and doesn't really matter anymore where you are. But still super helpful to kind of build these relationships over here, and because they are just complementary. And I think, I don't know, like I mean, you can do stuff via Zoom, especially if you've met people in person, but I still think it's good to spend some time out here, at least for the initial meetings, to connect. And then, you know, when it's more transactional, you can do everything else over Zoom. But so as a recommendation, I would just, yeah, also try to come out here and spend at least a few days here once in a while.
And what works different in the German European culture versus, you know, Silicon Valley style? What advice can you give a young person?
I think, I mean, like culturally it's a bit different, but also very inspiring, and people are very open to share and like help. So I would not worry too much about it. Just come here, try it out, and then iterate. I think the best thing is to not overthink it and just come here and do it.
Okay, that one I would second in a heartbeat. Don't overthink, just give it a try, come over here and network the heck out of it. That's really what it is. It's all about networking.
Yeah, maybe like if Said would be sitting here, our founder and CEO of Plug and Play, he would say, like, startups in Germany, they need to think bigger, and they should do a little bit better of a job in marketing themselves, because oftentimes they have really good technology, but they're not so good at showcasing it or selling it. So I think that's where the German entrepreneurs can learn a little bit. But as you guys say, it's a lot of networking, speaking to people. There's so many places and to go to, expos, Cyber Valley, it's and Karlsruhe, the IT forums, and AI forums. You know, you just need to be out there and speak with people. You guys are 100% right on that.
I would agree with that. You know, obviously, being German myself and having been here now over 30 years, it's the common pattern where sometimes the Germans, you know, the good thing is very structured, very organized. We have a world-class reputation for that, probably demonstrated by the car industry. But at the same time, if we overthink and we are overanalyzing and we're writing the manuals and all the reasons why thing doesn't work, and the Americans do almost the exact opposite, that probably is an interesting takeaway that people should internalize. It's a very important one, including the networking, and just give it a try. And for me personally, and Petra and others, they will probably 100% agree with that, is if you interview people here, and this is for everybody on this call now who is a startup person, if you fail, it doesn't matter in Silicon Valley. In fact, if you fail 3-4 times, it doesn't matter either. What matters is what you have done with that knowledge. What have you done afterwards, and rebuild yourself, because it's a learning experience. And that, although sometimes the Germans don't like to hear that, is something that is not engraved in the German culture. It is not yet just tolerated that failure is actually okay. And with failure comes the willingness to do risk-taking and just give it a try. On the positive, I have to tell you, having been in Germany a few weeks ago for 2 weeks in multiple cities with multiple meetings, entrepreneurs, most of you I met in person, the energy that I have experienced in Germany around the startup environment at the moment is unbelievable. I have never seen something like that in a positive way in literally 20 years, since the bubble of the internet has bursted. So I think we're all on the right track. I think this AI made in Germany and this ecosystem to be built is on the right track. We'll see in a few years how many startups we will come out of this particular initiative. I want to thank everybody to participate in this session. I haven't checked the chat message. I would assume Oliver has already shared the Zoom link for the follow-up networking session. Just to be clear, if you click on the chat and open that link, don't accept it yet. If you see the link, then just switch from this session to the other, where everybody can see everybody, and we have an open networking session for the next 30 minutes. With that, we are right on time. I really, really appreciate everybody's attendance here. I know your time is valuable, and I hope that the knowledge that we all shared has been very useful to the audience. So with that, see you on the other side in the other session. Thank you very much.